Hello, my name is Gabby Richardson, and you are listening to The Nexus of Narratives, where we use stories to bring people together across belief systems. New episodes are released every Monday on your favorite podcast platform, where I have a conversation with a guest about an obstacle that they faced in their life that invited them to take a look at their own beliefs, whether about themselves or about the world around them. We talk about how those beliefs were formed and how formative moments shape how we interact with the world. The Nexus of Narratives is what we will uncover through this story exploration. It's the common thread that unites all of us, no matter what our beliefs are. And if you're an avid podcast listener, you know the deal. Please take a moment on the platform where you are listening to follow, rate, and review. Those little acts go a long way in ensuring that this important work reaches more people. Take a look at the show notes for information on this episode, how to connect with today's guest, and any content warnings. So if there's anything that you want to be aware of, that's the place to find it. So without any further delay, I look forward to sharing this story with you, and I'll see you again here on your feed next Monday or sooner on Patreon. Hello, and welcome to the Nexus of Narratives. Donna, I'm so grateful to share space with you today, and thank you for joining and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
And if you were to just briefly introduce yourself and share your social location, help us get to know you a little bit better.
So my name is Donna DeLuca Marston. I grew up in Danvers, Mass, which is the North Shore. It's north of Boston. And I grew up in it was a small little town. Now it's kind of a much bigger town, much busier than when I was a little kid there. We'd ride our bikes all over the place and, be safe. And things are quite different. Although it's still a nice little town. My parents, my dad, he worked for the town. He was from Italy, came over when he was young. And my mom grew up in Marblehead, Mass. And she grew up quite wealthy. But I think it was at 16, her parents divorced and went from living in this beautiful home in Marblehead to a tenement apartment. So her life shifted quite greatly. And, I had a nice upbringing. They were kind and loving parents. And I have two brothers. I am the middle child, the only girl. So it was great with an Italian father. And I got married in 1979. My husband and I have been married for 45 years. We moved to New Hampshire 44 years ago, I think, something like that. And we raised our two sons, who are now 40 and 42. And I have three beautiful grandsons that are 19 months and 5.5 and 7.5, all from the same dad and mom.
Amazing. Yeah, I forgot that little nugget that your youngest grandchild's the same age as my daughter. So
yeah,
I have compassion for your kids.
It was funny. I was just watching a video of the two older ones dancing, and the 19-month-old is Theo, and he's dancing on a stool, and all of a sudden he loses his balance and takes a dive, and he's crying, and the other two just keep on dancing.
They're like, it's fine. He's fine. He does this all the time.
But boys, they bounce and then they come back and they go back for more. Yeah.
It's my daughter too. I don't know. Maybe it's just like being born in August of 2023 is that that gene. She does the same exact thing. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm glad you're so resilient. But man, oh
right?
man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we first talked, I shared the whole purpose of the platform is to share stories about, different pivotal moments in life where,
Mm.
we're invited to take a look at our own beliefs. And so what is the story or stories that you came to share with me today?
Is that the father of the 3 grandchildren, is a person in long-term recovery, and how I navigated that. Because when I found out, it started when he was about 15, and I suspected and couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong, what was different. Something was going on. He was changing, and is that typical 15-year-old behavior, right? You're in junior high, hormones are raging, kids are not nice, and trying to fit in. So there was a lot. And then as he got older, at 18, more of it started to show up. From 20 to 25, it was just an absolute nightmare. And so I went on this. Um, Actually, I went into the fetal position. I went to bed for 6 months and went in the fetal position, beating myself up with the what ifs, the could haves, and the should haves. What did I do wrong? I'm the mother. I should have known. And sorry, I do still get emotional. Even though we've long passed all of this, but it still brings back that, and it's my empathy for other people who are going through it as well, because I know their pain. And so we were on this long, hard journey, and of me trying to love him into recovery, to rescue and save him. And I learned the hard way that we can't love anybody into recovery. We can't rescue and save anybody who doesn't want to be rescued and saved. And I had to learn how to love him unconditionally. And I had to figure out how I could have a healthier relationship with him, even though both of us weren't emotionally healthy. What did that look like? That took years. And so this journey has been very organic. And 2 years before he found his recovery, I was sent on a mission for the state of New Hampshire for recovery, and I was the only mom. And so I went up to Knoll Farm, and I made a commitment to everybody that when I came back, I was going to start family support. Because back then, I'm talking in the late 1990s, you didn't talk about this. Not like you can today. There weren't the resources then that there are today. And so I did. I kept my word. I came back and I founded Family Sharing Without Shame. And it just grew and it just grew. And then I wrote a book, and then I wrote 3 more. And then I did, I've gone out nationally, and I work with parents who are sick and suffering, and their hearts are broken and they don't know what to do, and they're just so desperate to rescue and save their child. And so basically, I've taken what once was my mess and I've made it my message, because I turned my pain into purpose so that I can pay it forward. I made an agreement with my higher power that you keep my son sober, and I'll help others. Sorry.
There's no need to
Sorry.
apologize for the emotion. It's really
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. So, and that's what I do. That's what I do. I'm a certified recovery support worker. I'm licensed, and I'm a harm reduction trainer, although I don't practice, but I do have the certificate. I do teach some of it, but not all of it. And I've just, again, this is something I didn't go looking for. It just landed in my lap, and it's taken on a life of its own.
And how does that feel to have it taking a life of its own now after you had such a hard time for so long?
It's mind blowing. Like, it's amazing, because it's nothing I went looking for. It's nothing I expected. It's nothing I wanted. And it just has happened. And when I see the people that I work with shift their mindset about their child's addiction and their unhealthy helping, and I start to see them get better, doing baby steps, one foot in front of the other, and getting better and not doing the unhealthy behaviors that keeps our children comfortable in their addiction.
And what would that mean? And like, what was it specifically say that you did for yourself to speak from your experience as opposed to like from a more instructional place?
Well, I would throw money at oh, you need your drug dealer paid off so he doesn't beat you up. Let me take care of that. Oh, you can't make your car payment because you were out sick all week. And of course, he was on a binge or whatever. Let me do that for you. Those are the things. And I allowed him to stay in our home, which allowed him to be comfortable in his addiction while I walked on eggshells in my house, because I didn't want to do or say anything that would upset him for the fear that he would go out and get high. Because you never know what that next high is going to bring forward, right? He could just get high and be fine. He could die. So it's just taking that unhealthy behaviors that we do as parents and shifting the mindset, because just because they're living in our house doesn't mean they're safe. For example, I had many parents over the years. I ran family support, in person in New Hampshire for over 12 years till COVID hit. And I had parents that would go on drug deals thinking they're keeping their kids safe and then let them use their drugs in the house and then find them dead in the morning. Because they thought, if I pay for it and if I have them here, I'm keeping them safe. And so that's unhealthy helping, as much as we walk on a tightrope, right? Of the right and wrong thing, because there's no right or wrong way. That could have that could have saved somebody's life. Maybe somebody got sober when their parents did that. Maybe not. So it just, or I had another family that the mother was remarried and the son was homeless, and she was sick over it. And the stepdad would not allow him in the house. And she goes, I don't know what to do. I just want to feed him. And I said, well, did he say he couldn't come on the property? And she said, no, just in the house. I said, well, do you have a picnic table? She goes, yeah. I said, so why don't you make a dinner? Have him come over at the picnic table. You eat, you give him the leftovers, and talk about good memories when he was a little boy. Talk about the fun things you did as a family. Don't talk about his addiction. He knows what's going on. He feels bad enough about it as it is. He doesn't need to be reminded, because that's what we do. We point our fingers and we blame and shame, and we put a lot more on them that they don't need. So just talk about good times. And so that's what she started to do. Once a week, he'd come over and they would have dinner together, and he'd leave with food, with groceries. And eventually he got sober. Right? So, you just never know what's going to shift. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we have to do the shifting.
Yeah. And so as you were sharing initially about your journey with him, and then this turning that pain into your purpose, like, what was that experience of that transition for you? Because I picture like there's this short period of time where you had realized, oh, okay, I can actually make this purposeful. And in that translation of that pain, can you share more about that experience?
Yeah, when I went on that mission, and because I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to get help. And, pretty private, and didn't, who wants to go saying, hey, I have a son in active addiction and, can you help me? Because back then, my husband and I were both in sales. We were afraid of being, or at least I was afraid of being blackballed. We had another child we had to protect who's in high school. What's going to happen with him? Are people going to be talking about him or saying things to him? And, people aren't always nice. So when I came back from the Knoll Farm, I went to the Concord Hospital, our local hospital, and started speaking for them. I wrote my first book, Peeling the Onion. And so I went and gave them one. I said, hey, this might be something for your parents. And then they said, hey, how about you come and talk about your journey? So I started speaking there once a month. I became a regular. I did that for 15 years. And then from that, I started a family support group at the hospital. And it started off with 2 people. And next thing you know, I have 40 parents showing up. And then one of the treatment facilities in Manchester, another town in New Hampshire, asked me to start one at their treatment facility that wasn't affiliated. So I did that and, had huge numbers. I had some of the highest attendance in the state of New Hampshire because it was an organization that monitored it. So it started with that. And, I wrote my first book and I just kind of let that just flow very organically, naturally. I didn't really kind of think about it. I just let it happen. And it built a business that I didn't see coming or wasn't my goal. That's for sure. I hope I answered your question and didn't go off in a little tizzy.
It's okay. It's okay. And what was your experience like in your body or in your emotions as you were doing that as well?
Of course, a lot of insecurities came up. Like, who are you? Who are you to do this? Who do you think you are? Right? That little 9-year-old that was humiliated in school, she shows up still at 70 years old and says, what are you thinking? What are you doing that for? So it was tough. But I just moved forward because, again, I made a commitment that I took very seriously, and I would have, done anything for my son to remain in recovery. And not that I can control that. Nothing I do could control that. But in my mind, I made a commitment. I'm going to do everything in my power to pay it forward in order for my son to be healthy. And so I just, one foot in front of the other, knocking on doors. I started participating and holding rallies in the state of New Hampshire. And we'd have speakers come in and, we raised money for people who were in early recovery and they were going into sober homes, and we would buy them clothes and get them started or, pay their rent for the first month when they got out of treatment. So it just, all these different things just happened. They kind of landed in my lap because, in my opinion, they were meant to happen. And I'm the vehicle in which was used to bring this out, to get the message out to the people, especially to the parents who are hurting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I have a little bit of a probing question. So you had shared kind of this, have you heard of imposter syndrome?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you'd said it's like your 9-year-old self that's kind of that little antagonist. Yeah. So why that age?
Oh, because that's a horrific story of humiliation in 3rd grade. Yeah, I stayed back. And it's interesting because this memory, I didn't remember it till I was at Knoll Farm on the mission of recovery with all the people. And so repeat 3rd grade, I stayed back, and it was 1 through 4. And I'm in the 3rd grade again, and I had allergies, so my eyes are swollen. I'm just not feeling good about myself. And all the kids are going, Donna, you're in the wrong line. You're in the wrong line. You're in the wrong line. And finally, I had to say, I'm in the right line. I stayed back. And I just didn't want to be seen. It was like I wanted to be like this, And when I got up to the third grade class, the my desk was in, repeat third grade. My desk was in the fourth grade class, and they made me walk down the hall, and it was an old wooden school, and the floors creaked as you walked. It was the walk of shame. And I walked into the fourth grade class, and I said, "You have an extra desk." And everybody started to laugh. I got the desk, I pushed it into the third grade class. Everybody's laughing. I put it in the back of the room, and that's where I stayed all my life. So that little girl shows up.
Wow. I got chills listening to that.
And here's the thing. If I was had a substance use disorder, if it was part of my DNA, that could have caused me to self-medicate. But I didn't. I just went with the shame. And I let it take me down.
Well, and I think people choose different mechanisms to hide and to sit in that.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's like kind of physically or emotionally hiding, or like you said, using substances to numb and hide. I think there's so many different ways that we do that as people.
Yeah.
You know, rob ourselves of different opportunities and possibilities, allow that voice of insecurity to win the day, as opposed to saying, no, I actually got this. You're 9. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I asked for that experience because when it was so specific, and I was thinking as you were talking, I was like, man, when my voice of imposter syndrome comes up, she doesn't have an age. It's just kind of this ethereal voice of insecurity and uncertainty. So I thought that was really fascinating that you did have an age attached to it. And so then it does make me wonder, like, what is it that you believed about yourself or about others that you really faced in yourself to be able to step out of that? Don't go anywhere just yet. We will be back with this conversation in just a moment. Thank you so much for spending your time with me here on the Nexus of Narratives. As you may know by now, it goes a long way to support the podcast by listening, following, rating, and reviewing. So if you have enjoyed the content, please take a moment to support extending the reach of this important work. While the public episodes of the Nexus of Narratives focus on the stories of our guests, how belief systems have been formed, and how to build connection, we keep the conversation going on Patreon. We've built a phenomenal community of peer connectors on Patreon who are looking to build a more compassionate world together. While I could be continuing the conversation with the guest or digesting fantastic themes with my dear friend Rowan, there is a lot of great bonus content on Patreon, including additional benefits for different tiers. Search Nexus of Narratives on Patreon or click the link in the show notes to join this exclusive community. I look forward to connecting with you there. For more information on the Nexus of Narratives, ways to listen, opportunities to connect with me, or share a story of your own, go to nexusofnarratives.org. I personally monitor that inbox, so it is a quick and simple way to connect directly with me. Whether you're a new listener or have been around for a while, I'm deeply grateful for your time and commitment to this work. Without keeping you any longer, let's get back to the story. Like, what is it that you believed about yourself or about others that you really faced in yourself to be able to step out of that?
So that little 9-year-old girl told me all my life how stupid I am. Right. And so when I was at Knoll Farm on this recovery mission, and I think we were in a big circle and we were all bringing something forward to let it go or something. And that came up, like she showed up. And I talked about it for the first time because I had forgotten about it, but never understood, why do you feel so stupid? Well, when you're humiliated by 2 teachers, shame on them. this is what happens. So there was always that reserved, like, don't let people too close, because, they'll find out just how stupid I am, or they'll hurt me. They'll make fun of me. So by going there, that was a big step to go up to this farm all by myself. I didn't have a friend to go. I was sent alone, and I walk in, and here I am, the mother, not the person with a substance use disorder, and they're all in recovery, and they're looking at me like, oh God, this is some kid's mom, and all she does is remind us of what we do wrong. So they didn't receive me quite well. But I made some friends, and I made headway, and it was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life, because I don't go camping, and I was living in a tent. I was told I'd be in a yurt, in like out in the open, and they had me in the woods, and there were holes in my tent, and there were mice, and and you had to shower outside. Like, that's just not in my comfort zone. But what happened for me when I was there, I was in my tent one day, and I decided not to walk down, because I had to walk down this hill, and my knees were killing me. I was in my late 50s when I did this. And I sat there, and I honored I call her Little D, and I honored her, and we played hairdresser, and we talked, and I told her how much I loved her. So it was a great shift. So not only was I there for, on a recovery mission for the state of New Hampshire, I did a lot of personal recovery in that experience.
That's so beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
I love it.
Thank you.
Well, and so for people who are listening and can relate to anything that you're sharing, like to keep them in mind. So how can your story create connection for people who have similar experiences or similar beliefs as yours?
Well, I've been through it. I went through it for about 10 years. I know the pain. I know firsthand what the pain feels like, what it looks like. I know how the roles of the family are affected, and how we end up living in dysfunction if we're not typically dysfunctional people. I think there's families that are very dysfunctional, and it's very prevalent. And then there's families that, everybody has a little dysfunction, don't misunderstand me. But there's other people that might be a little bit more grounded, a little bit more balanced, but no matter what, our pain is the same. And if I can help one person navigate this, so they don't have to be in the peak fetal position like I was, beating myself up with could've, should'ves, and would'ves. What if? Why didn't I see it? What? It's all my fault. I'm the mother. I should have known. And if I can prevent anybody from going through that by teaching them what I know and how I managed to get through this and how I evolved, then that's a win-win. Because everybody deserves to live healthy and happy, even when our children are in active addiction. And learning how to let go of the guilt and the shame and stop blaming ourselves. Because I didn't inject him. I didn't crush oxy so he could snort them. I didn't go buy his drugs. I had nothing to do with it. But I blamed myself, and I had to undo all that. And what happened for me is this woman knew something was wrong, but she didn't know it was wrong. And she told me to read this book because she knew I was depressed. But I didn't know I was really depressed, because that plays with your head. And so she told me to read this book, and I was like, oh, I can't read another self-help. I just can't. And she said, all right, go to page 134. And I did. And it was an emotional scale. Jerry and Esther Hicks, Ask and It Is Given, their book. And I was number 22. I was at the bottom. I was depressed. I was full of despair, guilt, anger, you name it. I had it. And when I saw that, It was like, how did this happen? How did this happen to me? And so I hit my enough. I hit my enough in that pivotal moment. And the next day I decided, okay, this doesn't feel good, but this resonates with me, anger. Maybe I should do something about my anger that I'm feeling towards all those damn drug dealers. So what I did is I took a pillow and I beat my bed and I got all this aggression out and I got all this anger out. And so I learned to elevate myself up. Today I go by this emotional scale, and it's in my first book, Sharing Without Shame, too. I keep myself between 1 and 7, because if I get to number 8 and I get bored, all bets are off that I'm not going to vibrate down and be sick and suffering again. And the same thing applies to our children who are sick and suffering. This is a great tool for them to get healthy as well.
It's incredible that your aha moment, your moment of, like, in some of the classes that I support, we talk about like this critical confrontation moment when the pain just gets so great. They're like, I have to do something about this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that how it's almost human nature to try to avoid or numb the pain.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's, for everybody, it's different what that like critical moment is, where it's like,
Yeah.
I cannot handle this pain anymore. And then something happens that book was that moment for you.
Yeah.
And how cool it is that for you, that cathartic release of all of that anger, all of that pain, to release that, again, is not necessarily natural for people in a culture where we're told to shove it, don't express it, don't let people see too big of emotions. It's not safe when other people see big emotions. Like, to have that space to let that out so it can just be out of your body, so it's not trapping itself within you, is really incredible to naturally come to, because that's not something that was ever natural to me to do.
Yeah, and you know what? We're as sick as our secret. Period. It just keeps us stuck.
As sick as our secret. That is incredible. Very powerful, very powerful. And so for anyone who's listening who can relate to where you were at any point, what would you say to a past version of yourself?
Oh boy, hold on to your hope as long as your child is still walking on this earth. And your child could be, 50, 60, 70 years old, right? Your teen or adult child, as long as they're still walking on this earth, hold on to your hope, because you never know when the miracle of recovery will happen. And stop holding your breath. You do.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed me just doing a lot of like really deep.
We hold our breath. I used to catch myself holding my breath. I had to breathe.
Yeah. And for me, it's especially prevalent. And I don't know if my mom will get to this episode, and when she does, I'm going to have to give her a warning, is my one living uncle turned 60 yesterday. Still struggles with his addiction. He doesn't say that he is, but he was in the hospital recently for a cancer treatment. And my mom was like, what is going on with him? Is he dying? And the nurse is like, nah, it's fine. He's going to be fine. Yeah. And she was like, oh, he's going through withdrawals again. Great. And she's my mom's the one who supports him, because their parents have passed. So, it's so hard. It just feels very, very timely.
Yeah.
All of this. I'm like,
Well, and I do a 30-minute free consultation, so she's always welcome to call me.
Yeah, it's
or anybody is.
Yeah. And that'll come here in just a moment, is how people can find you too.
Yeah.
What do or did you need to feel most connected to the people around you?
Meaning my family, or how do you mean that?
Just to feel connected to people. I don't think it necessarily needs to be family.
I didn't feel connected for a long time. What worked I ended up I found a group of women that I went to many, many years ago. And it was Codependence Anonymous. And they introduced me to Melody Beattie books. And that's when the connectedness started. I felt connected to other women that were codependent because I didn't know. I didn't know that word. I didn't know that would describe. I was so codependent of my son and his addiction that he became my drug of choice. I became addicted to him. And that's what happens when you're codependent.
And so
Often,
what was
not
it?
always.
Yeah, what was it about those books that supported you in having your aha moment to feel more connected to yourself and others?
They they opened my eyes to the truth. They opened my eyes to look at things differently. They opened my eyes to not take my son's addiction personally and not make it about me, because my self-centeredness would sometimes show up. Because if my son died and if I didn't do everything possible to rescue and save him, how could I live with myself? That was my self-centeredness that I eventually identified
Wow.
and
Really
made
powerful.
it hard for people to understand that, right? And I had to I had to come to a place of acceptance, and I had to hand him over to a power greater than me, because I realized that, as much as this is my child, these are my sons, I'm a vehicle in which he came. He was a gift. And so he's God's child. And so when he was so sick, and through meditation, I ended up, it came to me like I envisioned him in a casket. I picked him up, I held him, I loved him, and I handed him up. And that's when, sorry, I was able to let go and to the God of my understanding. And by the grace of God, I mean, he went off to treatment, and he got sober on Mother's Day. And had it gone the other way, I would have found him dead on Mother's Day with a note. It just, letting go. And all of that led up to teaching me that and hitting my enough. And we can't do any of it until we get to that point. And it takes a lot to get to that point. And the other thing is, when our loved ones are in active addiction, they need to be loved more, not less.
It's like all of it. I think this makes me think about how just human existence, it doesn't make sense. It's ironic. It's contradictory. It's not logical. That as you're sharing, in these hard, really hard moments, that what I picture is you going from clinging so hard and so desperately to then, like, when you released was when things really shifted.
Yeah.
And you were trying so hard to hold him close.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't until you did the exact opposite that he got to where he needed to go, or he was able to start that journey.
Yeah.
And it's just, being human is a complete conundrum. It's not simple. It doesn't make sense. And then with all the pain, and I think about my family. I've had several close family members struggle with addiction, and some, like I said, still are. I remember experiencing the natural response of my grandparents, of expressing their shame, their disappointment, and I doubt that there was a lot of love felt, despite the fact that the way that they rescued him was out of love and out of desperation.
Yeah.
But it wasn't clear based on how they were talking.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We get shamed and blamed for loving for trying to help, right? Because we think we can love them into recovery. And so we're blamed and shamed for enabling the behaviors. And until we understand, I'm not going to change another parent until they understand what we're doing and or until they hit their enough. It's just like the person who's in active addiction, alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be. When they hit their enough is when they're going to start seeking treatment. We mimic each other's behaviors. It's a cat and mouse chase. The person in active addiction, it's like, when I do this whole cycle thing. So when my son was starting, his addiction was starting to take off, right? I'm going, what the heck's going on? And so he starts going, and it's the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. And as I'm following him in this circle, trying to keep up with him, I'm like, what the heck's going on? And then, he starts doing some behaviors that like lying, and he goes missing, or then he goes out on a binge. And now I'm reacting by like getting really pissed off. I'm getting really angry. And then the natural consequences start, and he gets arrested. And now I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of my son. It's like I'm embarrassed. How could I didn't raise my child to be like this? And then he makes these promises. I promise you, Mom, if you get me out of jail, I'll go to treatment. I'll do anything. I promise. I don't want to live this life. And so I'm cautiously optimistic. I bail him out of jail. He goes into treatment, and his eyes are clearing up, his beautiful blue eyes, he looks great. He's talking the talk, and I'm cautiously optimistic. And he gets out of treatment. And as soon as he's irritable, restless, and discontent, off we go again. And as parents and loved ones, we chase them and chase them and chase them. It's like being in a hula hoop. Step outside of it. Someone has to stop the madness.
Have you heard of Cartman's drama triangle?
Same, yeah.
It's
yeah.
like,
oh yeah,
you're describing exactly that, right? Just in that specific circumstance of, because as you're describing that, I was like, this sounds exactly like Cartman's drama triangle. And for anyone who's listening that's not familiar with that tool, it's a fantastic tool.
I
and
utilize it.
Yeah, it's the, you go from being the victim. So like what I was hearing from you is like, oh, how could you do this to me? Yeah. This is happening again. What have I done to deserve my child treating me like this? To then they go off in a spiral and you're like, oh wait, but I can save you. So then you become the rescuer. Yep. Oh, but I can save you. I can help you. I can get you out of this. Okay, we're going to do different this time. But then they don't. So then you become the perpetrator of like, oh, why did you do this again? I can't believe that you did this. And you're never going to get clear. You're never this, blah, 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 blah. And then something happens and then you're back to the victim place. And like, we're always going to be stuck in a cycle of drama so long as we bounce between victim, perpetrator, prosecutor, whatever, and then rescuer. So very interesting to hear it in like those terms. Was really cool as you shared that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And last but certainly not least, if anyone's listening and they're like, I don't get it. This is bananas. This is bonkers. I can't resonate with a single thing that's shared. How can your story create connection for people who have different experiences and different beliefs?
Well, if somebody's not ready, they're not ready. When they're ready, they'll receive it. Right? It's like when you're ready to receive, the teacher shows up. And that's okay. Because the denial is a beautiful thing. I lived there for a long time. Not my son, not my beautiful baby boy. Are you kidding me? Yeah. And that's okay, because we get to live our lives the way we want to live our lives. But when somebody hits enough, or they're getting to a point where this is dangerous, or they're financially drowning, they're emotionally drowning, then they'll reach out. They'll find a way to seek some help, whether it's on the computer, in person, whatever, reading a book. I started by reading a book because I didn't want anyone to know my story. And then eventually I was so desperate, I started to open my mouth. And look where my mouth got me.
I'm sure your mouth has been the instigator of saving a lot of people and supporting them. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy. But there's a lot of people hurting. And, if I can help somebody, I'm more than willing to do that.
It's wonderful. It's really incredible. So if there's anyone that's been listening and they'd like to learn more about your work or get in touch, we will have your information in the show notes, but how can people find you?
Go to www.sharingwithoutshame.com, or they can email me it's Donna, Donna, the number 4, the word support @comcast.net.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This is really incredible.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time and I appreciate your energy and your vulnerability. So this is really incredible.
Thank you.
Wow, what a tremendous conversation that was. So thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope you were able to find just as many nuggets of wisdom as well as actionable steps to build connections in the spaces all around you. This is an extremely grassroots production, so thank you to my dear friend Rowan for their commitment to this work by posting on social media and leading fantastic conversations with me on Patreon. So be sure to join that community on Patreon and enjoy the additional content. And thank you, of course, to my sweet and talented husband, DJ, for creating the music that is used in this podcast. Now, let's go out and create some connection in this world.